All right, why don't we get started here? And some people are still joining us. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Blair Schlechter, Vice President of Economic Development and Government Affairs for the Beverly Hills Chamber, and welcome to our first virtual Zoom Government Affairs Committee meeting. So bear with us. We're going to try and make this as smooth as possible. I think what we're going to do is we'll mute everyone. I will unmute the speakers. And what I'll ask is that if you have questions or comments during discussion, to submit them through the chat box or by raising your hand, and then we can take them that way, just so the meeting can go a little smoother. And then I will try and open it up at the end for kind of a more general discussion of what you guys are hearing or any input you guys have on business issues. So with that, I'll turn it over. Oh, by the way, this meeting is being recorded. So just so you know, we're going to send it out to our membership afterwards, but I did want to let you know that. And with that, I'm going to turn over to our chair of the Government Affairs Committee, David Meharani.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone is safe and sound from,
I unmuted you. You're good.
Okay, good. It looks like from all the videos, everyone is at home, so that's good. Good to hear. And happy holidays to each and every one of you for those who celebrate Easter and Passover. Another thing that I wanted to add to what Blair just mentioned with respect to procedures is if anyone has a question, Zoom does have a chat feature as well as a feature to raise hands. So you could use both of those to participate and or raise your hand in video. And that's how you can get either of our attention, and we'll try to address your questions as they come. Today we've got a really packed agenda, and I want to introduce some of the speakers that are speaking today. We have Jennings, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Laura Byrie from City of Beverly Hills, Sarah from BizFed, and Blair, who just spoke. So can we just get a nice little introduction from each of them, and then we can start our meeting. Jennings?
Yeah, you want me to go first? Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks, David. Thanks, Blair. Happy to talk about the CARES Act a little bit. I know that there are probably a lot of questions on this. This is, of course, the massive Phase 3 bill, as they call it, that was passed by Congress about 2 weeks ago on the 27th. And there are two programs in particular that I'll probably focus most heavily on: the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as the SBA's Economic Injury Disaster Relief Program. These are the two loan programs that are available for small businesses to take advantage of in order to hopefully weather this COVID-19 crisis for the next couple of weeks and get through this okay. So I'll just kind of set the stage, though, by talking about the bill itself, and just so everybody understands the scope of the bill, because I think it's important to put that in context. Because there have been a lot of frustrations with how it's been rolled out, and we've been hearing a lot of frustrations from small businesses and going through the SBA process and working with their lender to try to get the PPP loan. We've heard a lot of frustration there. We've heard a lot of frustration from the lenders themselves, folks that are in the banking industry, banks, credit unions, other financial institutions. So understand all of that, but just to create the broader context, this is a huge bill, $2.2 trillion bill. That's 10% of the nation's GDP, and this thing was put together in less than 2 weeks. It's 900 pages long, so there's a lot to digest, a lot of information that we're still trying to get even on this bill and how it's going to be rolled out. So we've been looking to the SBA and to Treasury for additional information. We did see the guidance from Treasury on the PPP program last Thursday night. Unfortunately, it was Thursday night, and banks were expected to begin accepting applications from small businesses for PPP on Friday morning. So it wasn't a whole lot of lead time, but we did see the guidance there. And that's part of the problem, too, that we've seen, of course, is just the fact that it's all happened very fast. And so, banks and lenders are kind of scrambling to make it all work. So we saw that last week. This week, we're going to be anticipating even more guidance. So today we're hoping to see more guidance from Treasury on the PPP program for self-employed and for independent contractors. They are also eligible to apply for the PPP, but we're still waiting guidance there. They will be eligible to apply through their lenders starting tomorrow on April 10th. And then the part of the bill that we're waiting to see more information on specifically as well is on the mid-size, larger companies. What do the credit facilities look like? The government's going to attempt to establish something like 9 different credit facilities for larger companies. And this is also a pool of money that applies to states and local governments. And so we're still trying to kind of see what those programs are going to look like. And in particular, what does the middle market program look like? That's for the mid-sized companies between 500 and 10,000 employees. A lot of questions there. So I think over the next couple of hours and days, we'll be able to see some more information from Treasury on that. With all that being said, I do also want to make sure that I highlight that the 2 basic underlying objectives that Congress had when putting together this bill were liquidity and payroll. So on the liquidity side, understanding that we have a liquidity crisis now in this country, small businesses need cash. And so that's why this program, when you look at the PPP program, it's really designed to get as much cash as possible out the door and into people's hands as soon as possible, and to make it as easy as possible for businesses to get. So that's how the program was designed on that front. We have to reestablish liquidity. The other part of it, the other underlying intention here of Congress was to make sure that we keep payroll and that we keep folks kind of intact on the payroll side of things, that we still have employees that are going to be kept on payroll and tied to their employers. That way they can continue to get their health insurance benefits through their employers. We have 150 million Americans that get their health insurance that way. We need to make sure that they still have access to that. And then also when we get to a point in a couple of weeks here or month, however long it takes to get past this crisis and start opening up the economy, we need to get things back rolling as soon as possible. And if we have folks that are still attached to their employers on payroll, then that'll make that transition that much easier. So just to understand that those are the 2 underlying intents. So even though the bill is not perfect and there are a lot of things that still need to be worked out, that's what Congress was aiming to do: reestablish liquidity and make sure that folks can stay on payroll. Obviously, we've seen problems with that, and it hasn't been as effective as I think Congress would have liked it to been. And if you look at the unemployment numbers, for example, that we saw come out today, another 6.6 million unemployment claims last week. So over the last 3 weeks, we've seen 17 million unemployment claims. That's about 10% of the nation's workforce in just 3 weeks. So these are obviously terrible numbers that we've been seeing lately. And we know that state unemployment insurance UI programs are really under a lot of pressure right now. And so hopefully we can get this PPP and the EIDL programs up and running, and businesses can get access to the money that they need as soon as possible and keep people on payroll so we can relieve some of those pressures and keep those unemployment figures down. So I don't know, I'm not sure if I have I think Blair, I might need to get permission from you, to share the screen. If you'd like for me to do that, that might work. Here we go.
You're co-host, so I think you can do it now. There you go.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right, so I'll just go over the 2 programs really quickly because I think that's what everybody wants to hear about, and that's most relevant to small business. So first and foremost, the Paycheck Protection Program. This is the $350 billion program for small businesses. That's businesses with less than 500 employees. Other businesses that are eligible to apply for this are nonprofit 501c3s. It's pretty much only 501c3s. 501c4s, C6s are not eligible to apply for the PPP. And Blair, I know that's a big concern in the chamber community, and I could talk about that a little bit later as well. Folks that are self-employed, sole proprietors, independent contractors, they are all able to apply for the PPP. Also important to note, the businesses that have a NAICS code 72 or above, they are also eligible. Now this is, so NAICS code 72, that means that you're in hospitality or the food service. Even if you have more than 500 total employees, as long as you have less than 500 employees per location, you are eligible to apply for the PPP loan. So keep that in mind. The loan amount that you'd be eligible for, the maximum loan amount that you can receive is either 2.5 months of your average payroll or it's $10 million. It's going to be the lesser of those two figures. The way that you would go about calculating your average payroll, there's really two ways, and it depends on your bank and what they ask for. It could either be the last 12 months, so you'd be going back to April of 2019. You take all of your payroll costs over that period of time, divide by 12, and that would give you your average monthly payroll. It's either that, or there are some banks that are asking for calendar year 2019. So they'll ask for the whole year of 2019, take your payroll costs, add them all up, divide by 12, and that will get you your average monthly payroll. Important to note what goes into the calculation of average monthly payroll. So that will include things like health insurance benefits, retirement benefits that you're providing your employees, sick leave, any PTO that you're providing, commissions, tips, that's all included. State and local tax on employment. So your state tax on unemployment insurance would be included, not the federal tax on unemployment insurance. All of those things are calculated as part of your payroll costs. Also important to note that compensation above $100,000 per individual employee is not to be counted. So if you have an employee that makes $150,000 a year, you have to deduct $50,000 from that calculation. Only $100,000 can you actually include in the calculation of average monthly payroll. So once you get the average monthly payroll, you would multiply that by 2.5, and that would essentially get you 2.5 months of payroll costs. So that would be your maximum amount, or $10 million, whichever one is less. You would then go to your lender. So whoever you have a lending relationship with, if you don't have a lending relationship with anyone, you just go to whatever financial institution, whatever bank you have an account with, you would go there. So this would be open for most SBA 7A approved banks and lenders. They are already participating in this program. They are eligible to participate in this program. And the SBA over the last several days has worked very hard to really ensure that just about every FDIC insured financial institution can participate. And hopefully that will continue to be the case. I know that there were some issues with some of the larger banks. Wells Fargo in particular comes to mind because they had an asset cap of $10 billion. That has been resolved. That cap has been lifted for this program. So that's no longer going to be an issue. So we're seeing a lot of folks participate. Of course, we're seeing a massive volume, huge number of applications, hundreds of thousands of applications, and worth tens of billions of dollars. And we saw that pretty much right away. Over the weekend, it became clear that there was that this program was hugely, popular for small businesses, and it looks like there's a very real chance that we could run out of the $350 billion unless Congress acts on this at some point soon. So that's why Congress we saw the attempt, at least on the Senate side, to do that today, to infuse an additional $250 billion into the program. That failed, unfortunately, and hopefully Congress will get to revisit this in the next couple of days and into next week. We think that will be the case. But understand, certainly, kind of as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, that there are a lot of concerns from businesses in their inability to track down their lenders or to hear back after they submitted applications. Just understand that this is a new program. It's a massive program, and banks are under a lot of pressure here in putting this together, and there are certainly a lot of kinks that need to still be worked out, and I think that they will continue to be worked out over the next couple of days and weeks. Minimal requirements are involved, so the underwriting is minimal, no collateral, no personal guarantee, access to outside credit that has been waived as well, so that's not going to be an issue. So that's good. Another great thing about this program is that the loan does convert into a grant, and that grant amount is equal to whatever you spent on payroll, rent, interest on mortgage, and utilities for the first 8 weeks after origination. So important to keep that in mind, that as an employer, there are two different calculations that you're going to have to think about. The first, of course, is how you calculate your average monthly payroll. And then the second is thinking about what amount of the loan is actually going to be capable of being forgiven. And so that'll be the first 8 weeks of expenses. They have to be on payroll, rent, interest on mortgage, and utilities. Those expenses of the first 8 weeks can be forgiven, but there's also additional, from what we saw, additional guidance from last week from Treasury. 75% of the forgiven amount must be spent on payroll, and 25% could be spent on those other things that I mentioned. Now, if you're an employer and you've taken out this loan and you have some left over after the 8 weeks, you have that amount that's been forgiven and you have some money left over. Important to note what the terms of that loan are. Then the terms are 1% interest rate, amortized over 2 years. So you have a 2-year term on the loan. Payments would be deferred for at least 6 months. There's no pre-penalty if you want to pay early. That's fine. So just keep that in mind. It's a 1% interest rate and maximum term of 2 years. Loan forgiveness can also be impacted if you reduce your employee count and if you reduce wages per employee by more than 25%. So please keep that in mind. Once again, the whole point of the PPP program is to keep your employees on payroll. And so that's why if you do end up reducing your employment count, your loan forgiveness will be impacted proportionally. Now, I think Congress understood when they put this plan together that there are going to be a number of employers that already laid people off or already started furloughing people in February and early March because of COVID-19 or reducing wages because of COVID-19, and that's fine. If you're an employer and you did that between February 15th and April 26th, that is okay, as long as, and you could still have your loan forgiven ultimately, if you bring back all of your employees, so you reestablish what your employment levels were at February 15th, and you also have to reinstate wages at least 75% of what they were on February 15th. If you do those two things by June 30th of 2020, then you will still be eligible for the full loan forgiveness. So that's kind of how the PPP program works. We have, as Blair mentioned, additional information that you could find on uschamber.com. You can go specifically to uschamber.com/SB Loans, and you can find our 4-pager on the PPP program. I think that that's been really helpful for folks. As a matter of fact, the SBA itself, they use that 4-pager. So I think it really is kind of the gold standard. So please check that out. We have other guides as well on our website. You can find a guide for the EIDL loan, the SBA EIDL loan, which I'll talk about in just a minute. You could also find a helpful guide on the employee retention tax credit, deferral of payroll taxes. Those are other kind of tax incentives that are out there that I want you to be aware of. And then we're also going to be putting together an additional guide on PPP specifically geared toward self-employed and independent contractors, because like I mentioned, they are going to be eligible for this program starting tomorrow. I'd also recommend checking out the Treasury's website. If you go to treasury.gov/cares, you'll be able to get more information for borrowers and lenders. They also have really helpful FAQ documents, and you can find the PPP application form there as well. It's a 2-page form. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to fill out. You would fill that out and take that to your lender and make sure that you also have supplemental payroll documentation as well that you could take to your lender. They're going to want to see that most likely, but you could find that PPP application form on the Treasury's website. And then lastly, the EIDL program. This is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. That was already in existence, of course, and that's something that businesses could take advantage of if they had endured financial hardship due to a natural disaster. Of course, this is very much a disaster. So what the CARES Act did was it really kind of put the EIDL program on steroids, but it is different from the PPP, and I'll talk about ways that it is different and why, as an employer, if you're thinking about applying for these programs, you might want to think about what program makes the most sense for you. The EIDL loans are eligible for or are available to small businesses, once again, with fewer than 500 employees. Also nonprofits, including faith-based nonprofits, and also 501c4s, 501c6s, so the chamber community, they could get access to these EIDL loans. Sole proprietors, self-employed, independent contractors are also able to apply. You can get up to $10 to $2 million in working capital for up to 30-year term at a fixed interest rate of 3.75% for small businesses, 2.75% for nonprofits. Now, the idle loan, the major distinction between the idle loan and the PPP is the things that you can use this for. So the PPP, it has to be used for payroll, rent, interest on mortgage, and utilities. It can't be used for things beyond that. The idle can be used for those things, but it can also be used to pay for increased costs due to supply chain disruption or other obligations or debts that you have that are outstanding that you cannot meet because of loss of revenue. You can use the idle loan for those kind of things. So important to keep that in mind. And the reason why I highlight that is because there are a lot of employers out there that might think about the PPP loan and think that that sounds good, but remember, that's based off of your payroll. So if you don't have high payroll costs and you have high capital costs elsewhere, it might be worth thinking about the idle loan. That might be a better fit for you. So just wanted to throw that out there. There are two different programs and they both kind of can fit different businesses depending on what you're looking for. Payments on this program are deferred for up to 1 year. Loans are based off of credit scores, no tax returns required. Underwriting on this program has also been eased. So up to $200,000 you can get without a personal guarantee. No collateral is necessary for up to $25,000. And then another thing that the CARES Act did was it added this $10,000 emergency grant. This is a cash advance emergency grant, which means it does not have to be paid back, that you can receive within 3 days. And you can receive it even if your application for the idle loan is denied. Now, we have learned a little bit more information about this over the last couple of days. The $10,000 figure, just because you apply for it doesn't mean you'll get $10,000. It's up to $10,000. So you could receive less than that. And then also we've heard from a lot of people that have put in their applications for this more than 3 days ago, and they haven't heard back at all, and they haven't received the $10,000. As a matter of fact, on all of my webinars that I've done, nobody has received the $10,000 grant yet. So what I've heard from SBA is that that 3-day window really refers to the time period after you receive a confirmation email from the SBA that they have processed and they've approved your application. Once you receive that email, then within 3 days, you'll be able to see that $10,000 or up to $10,000 in your account. So that's what I've heard on that. I know that there have been just general delays from the SBA and people applying for the idle program haven't heard back, even if they applied a week or 2 weeks ago. Understand that their bandwidth is extremely limited, that this is kind of an unprecedented volume that they're dealing with.
It's not on now, but I need you to
so
get it.
It could take a couple of weeks
Okay.
to get this process for some folks. Now, also important to note the way that this interacts, the idle loan interacts with the PPP. You can, as an employer, apply for both loan programs, but you cannot use the money for the same thing. So you cannot use the idle loan to pay for things that the PPP covers, such as payroll, rent, interest on the mortgage, utilities, things like that. If you have both, you'd have to use the idle loan for those other things that I mentioned, supply chain disruptions, other costs. You can certainly do that. If you already have an idle loan and you're using that already for payroll costs or things that are covered under the PPP, you can also apply for the PPP, but essentially what you'd be doing is applying to roll over your idle into a PPP or refinance your idle loan into a PPP, which might make sense for some people because the PPP, of course, a large portion of that loan could be forgiven. So that's how those two programs interact with one another. And then important to note that unlike the PPP, you do not go through your lender for the idle loan. You go directly through the SBA. You go to sba.gov/disaster, and that's where you'll be able to find more information on the program and then also find the application itself. And you can fill it out there and submit it there. So those are some of the main highlights for the idle and the PPP programs. I just wanted to kind of close by mentioning the state of play and where we're at now. Understanding that there have been a lot of concerns with these programs and how they've been rolled out. That's something that we have taken as well directly. We've had conversations with folks in Congress and the administration on this. They're certainly aware of some of these problems, and I think that they'll be resolved. It'll take some time to do that. So hopefully we'll see some more progress there, and we'll start to see actual money being received by folks and getting into accounts, because we want to see that start to happen as soon as possible. For the PPP program, as I mentioned earlier, there is kind of now a realization in Congress that they're probably going to run out of money at some point. And so that's why the Senate attempted to infuse an additional $250 billion into that program today through unanimous consent. The unanimous consent vote would just be if you have consent of all 100 senators, then you could just approve it that way without having to fly everybody back to DC and have a roll call vote. That unfortunately failed today. But I think that at the end of the day, Republicans and Democrats understand that this program needs to be boosted and that they're going to work to do that. And so Secretary Mnuchin has been working specifically with Senate Democrats and with Speaker Pelosi because Democrats had some additional demands and additional things that they wanted to see included. And so hopefully we'll get some of those issues ironed out and we can infuse the amount of money that we need into this PPP program and make sure that small businesses can get access to it. Now, in regards to a phase 4 package, there's been a lot of talk about phase 4. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know what the timeline is going to be. It may or may not include this PPP, this additional money for the PPP. I think the original thinking was that you would add $250 billion just up front pretty easily through unanimous consent and without having to bring everybody back to DC. You do that and then work on a broader phase 4 package later. Not sure if that's going to happen now, but there is going to be some sort of a phase 4 that'll happen. And I think you'll see Congress looking at kind of additional support for small businesses, potentially an expansion of unemployment insurance, what needs to happen with the individual paychecks that are going out to people. Does there need to be a second round of paychecks? I think that that's going to be some of the stuff that'll be talked about. There are going to be a lot of other issues in regards to more money for states and local governments. That kind of stuff will be discussed in a phase 4. We'll see how that ultimately plays out, but I want everybody to know that what from the U.S. Chamber, and this, so briefly I'll talk about kind of the issue I know that Blair cares about and us in the 501c6 community and the Chamber community. We will make the push and continue to make the push for 501c6s to be included as part of the PPP program. They're not eligible to apply for the PPP loan as of right now. But we understand, I mean, there are C6s, chambers of commerce, other trade associations across the country. These are community organizations that are kind of, they play such integral roles. And we're seeing that now more than ever, as chambers being this ultimate resource for business in this, time of great need. These chambers are really struggling and they're going to need assistance and they need help. And so we're going to push Congress to make sure that they address that issue in a phase 4 package. And we'll keep everybody posted on that. And then the other thing that we're continuing to push, and that, well, I should say we're just really starting to push right now and talking with Congress on, is how do we reopen the economy? How do we start to think about the next steps of reopening? That's a serious conversation that's going to need to take place over the next couple of weeks because not every part of the country looks like New York. Some parts have been less affected than others. Not every non-essential business necessarily needs to be closed down for a matter of weeks. There are certain, I think that businesses can figure out ways to adapt, to do social distancing, and to get at least parts of their workforce back online and to get people working again. And then how does retail, restaurants, folks in hospitality, how are they going to strategize moving forward over the next couple of weeks, change their business model, and make it to where they can also start to reopen sooner rather than later, but also have some of these safeguards, these health safeguards in place to make sure that we're continuing to do social distancing and looking out for people's health. I think that that's going to be a big part of the discussion over the next couple of weeks and a big part of our focus because we've already seen, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, 17 million unemployment claims in 3 weeks, and we're going to see even more, a couple more million. Who knows what it's going to be for this week? We'll see those numbers next week, obviously. 10% of the workforce. I mean, this is getting to a very dangerous point, I think, and we're going to really have to start thinking about minimizing the economic damage that we're seeing here. And how do we turn this around in a responsible way while also protecting, of course, people's health? So we're going to be playing a really large role in that discussion. So just wanted to keep you posted on that. Of course, we'll let everybody know as things develop on that front. But happy to take any questions. I don't know if we have time, Blair, for questions now, but happy to take them now or at the end.
We actually
thanks. We're running a bit long, but why don't we do quickly, if anyone has any questions, submit through the chat box. One other thing I wanted to add about the issue of including membership trade organizations is we did submit a letter to our federal representatives, Congressman Liu and Senators Feinstein and Kamala Harris, expressing our desire that membership trade organizations be included in the next federal stimulus package. And we'll put up something before we finish about ways you can reach out to them as well. So we strongly encourage everyone here, because organizations like the Chamber, ways we get information, and if they're not supported, all the businesses that work with them won't have the information they need. Mm-hmm. So any questions real quick before we move on, because we want to make sure we got a lot going on. I don't see anything in the chat box. David, do you have anything?
No, I don't see any questions in the chat box. One thing that we missed while I got excited to introduce Jennings was we needed to, as a function of this group, approve the minutes from February. So any chamber member that's in good standing, I'd like to get a vote for the approval of February's minutes. Can we get an aye for approval of minutes? Oh, raise hands actually. Anyone doesn't want to see them approved? Good. All right, minutes are approved. Next, we've got, thank you, Jennings. That was very informative and comprehensive. Thanks a lot. Next, we've got Laura Byrie from the City of Beverly Hills to talk about some of the city council ordinances, amongst other stuff. Laura, let me unmute you.
I think I should be good. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
I'm calling in from my cell phone. Perfect.
Yeah.
So you can see me video on the screen, and then hopefully it's clear on the sound from my cell phone.
Sounds
good
good.
afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Laura Byrie, Marketing and Economic Sustainability Manager for the City of Beverly Hills. Joining me also today, I can see via the video conference, is Susan Healy-Keene, who's our Community Development Director for the City of Beverly Hills. I wanted to just go over some brief policy things that have been changed or updated since our last time that we all met back in February. You may have heard that we did change mayors. So we now have a new mayor. Our new mayor is Les Friedman, and our new vice mayor is Bob Wunderlich. We also were able to certify our council elections. So Julian Gold is returning to the city council, as well as Lily Bossi. And then John Mirisch is continuing on as a council member and has finished his term as mayor. So it is the same 5 council members that you had before, but in a slightly different order. And they continue to serve the City of Beverly Hills during this time. What I wanted to go over today was some policy changes that occurred as a result of the coronavirus and the COVID-19 efforts. And the City Council has obviously been actively involved in that, as well as our staff, working to try to support our business community in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce, the Conference and Visitors Bureau, and the Rodeo Drive Committee. As many of you have heard it said a million times over, this is truly an unprecedented time. But I assure you the staff is here to work with you and support you during this time as we go through this together. Because it truly is going to take a village to get out of this one, and we're all in this together. So some of the things that the City of Beverly Hills City Council and staff have done to really try to help our business community during this time is that we have deployed over 150 5-minute customer loading signs. So this allows people to park in those meters outside of restaurants that are currently open for pickup and delivery, outside of pharmacies, and be able to park there for no cost. And we proactively went out and put those out. We put bags over the meters, we put signage out there, and we worked with the businesses to try to locate those in high densely populated areas that have a lot of traffic, so that folks don't have to worry about paying the meter when they're just trying to go and pick up that food to take back home and stay safe. We also relaxed our sign ordinance. So throughout the city, you'll now see signs that we typically would not allow. That's things like sandwich board signs or large banners on top of business facades. And that's really to help our business community be able to advertise that they are open, they are available, they are still providing some essential services to our community, like food and markets and pharmacies at this time. We also are allowing for flexible timelines for renewal of outdoor dining permits, because as you know, you can't do outdoor dining right now, and allowing for applicants to put their existing planning applications on hold without any penalties. We also have altered our planning submittal process, so you can do that all online, submit electronically. You can even do a zoning counter conversation via FaceTime or a GoToMeeting, and you can do it all virtually. So really trying to provide you that service from the comfort of your own home or wherever it is that you find yourself at this time. The council did do a temporary moratorium on evictions of commercial tenants for not paying rent. That includes those that are in our properties that we own, as well as properties that we do not own throughout the city. We've also relaxed the delivery hours for trucks that are delivering when it comes to those vital resources such as groceries and food to get into those markets and get those stocks, those shelves restocked with the necessities, including toilet paper and more. And we've expedited construction permits related to our Metro Purple Line project. So you may have seen that we were able to expedite that. Wilshire is currently closed between Crescent and Beverly, and you've given the green light for Metro to really ramp up during this time when we have such low vehicular traffic on the streets. And we have also prioritized some public right-of-way projects. So you're going to see a lot of construction, as you know, is an essential and allowable business operation to occur during this stay-at-home order. And you're going to see some more construction occurring. That's going to be on sidewalks and alleys throughout the city of Beverly Hills as we take advantage of the fact that there's reduced pedestrian and vehicle traffic at this time. When it comes to financial assistance, which I know is top of mind for all of us, some of the things that we've done is we have provided the ability for businesses to pause their solid waste, that's their trash collection. So if you're not open right now, you can go ahead and call or email us and we will put that account on hold or pause, and then you don't have to pay that. The same is true also for our monthly parking customers. So if you are paying a monthly parking fee and you're not going into work right now and not utilizing that, you can also put that on pause as well. We also offered a 4-month deferment on payments for our transient occupancy tax for our hotels. And then we've been working very closely with our chamber partners, and thank you to all the chamber staff that's working remotely in partnership with us on these efforts. Some of the things that we did is we have, the chamber has created a list of restaurants, markets, and pharmacies that are currently open at this time, and they have that up on their website and they're driving traffic to that. They also have worked together to host several small business development center seminars, webinars, and free one-on-one counseling to help you, either guiding you through the application process for one of these federal or state programs, or really just to help you learn how to pivot your business during this time. And then we have created the resources section on the Beverly Hills Chamber website, as well as our website related to financial resources. So all the different information that you learned about today with the Paycheck Protection Program, the EIDL program, and many more programs that are available at the federal and state level are included both on the city's website at beverlyhills.org/coronavirus, as well as over on the chamber's website. We've been using different ways to communicate with our business community. As you might know, we don't necessarily have a full database of email addresses for every business in the city. So we try to use every method we can think of. That's everything from utilizing social media, our website. We use a technology called Everbridge, which does those kind of robo phone calls. We also use text message. We've used email addresses for those that we do have from our business tax license system, as well as utilizing other means of social media and outreach, including articles and ads in the local papers. So we encourage you to stay connected with us so that you can stay in touch, stay connected with the chamber. You can also sign up for text alerts. You just simply text Bev Hills to 888-777, and that's Bev Hills to 888-777, and you can get text alerts regarding what's going on during this time. So I just want to say thank you again to all of you for hanging in there. We're all in this together. You got to see a wonderful video that came out in partnership between the City of Beverly Hills Mayor Les Friedman, as well as your Chamber CEO and President Todd Johnson, kind of talking about the importance of supporting each other during this time, and that the only way we're going to get through this is by working together. So I'm trying to check, is there any questions over on the right-hand side?
We have one question
about, is there
Ryan.
A summary of these changes? Yes. So I have shared a summary of these changes, that were the ones that I was sharing with you verbally with Blair, and we can get that over to you, Ryan. So the different things that we have done for the City of Beverly Hills, yes, for the business community. Any other questions? And then Susan, I think, has stepped away at the moment. Checking if there's anything else to add. Okay.
Great. If there's no other questions, I don't see any.
One other question, Laura, in regard
Yes.
to the commercial tenants,
Yes.
you know, there's a limit on evictions. Can you go into a little bit about what's expected once the emergency order is over, in terms of back pay still expected under the current time? Is that right?
Yeah, so with regard to, and let me see if I understand the question correctly, with regard to commercial evictions, so you wouldn't be evicted, but there is still the expectation that you will have a conversation with your landlord to renegotiate and discuss how you're going to pay those terms back for your rent. So it's not a forgiveness of rent, but it is more a deferment of your rent. So if you have a existing relationship with your landlord, and I would encourage you to have those conversations sooner rather than later, the ordinance that was passed by the city council prevents them from evicting you, but it does not relieve you from your duty to figure out a conversation with your landlord on how to pay that rent long term. The other thing I forgot to mention, Blair, is that the next city council meeting is going to be on April 21st. I would encourage you to continue to participate in those. We are doing them virtually, so you can call in, you can email your comments. Comments can be emailed to cityclerk@beverlyhills.org, and then just simply state you would like them read into the record. And the agendas for those meetings come out on the Friday before the meeting. So the next meeting for City Council is April 21st, which means it would come out on the Friday before that. And I encourage you to stay involved and stay connected. The Chamber is actively working with the City Council and the staff to find ways to improve the situation for our business to community, to come up with creative solutions, not only ones that are being done by our neighboring cities like West Hollywood and Culver City and Santa Monica and LA, but stuff that would really work here in Beverly Hills for our unique community. So stay tuned, more to come.
Thank you very much. Next up is Sarah from Houston. Sarah is going to be speaking about some fun stuff with respect to the LA City Council and LA County rules.
Lots and lots of fun, that's for sure. So asked me to join the committee today to talk about the LA City and LA County recall, retention, and paid sick leave policies. So I'm going to briefly go over a summary of what these are, starting with LA City. So LA City, a couple weeks ago, held an emergency city council meeting on March 27th. And in it, there were several ordinances that were within the agenda, but there were three in particular that the business community was really hung up on. And that was particularly the right of recall, the worker retention, and the paid sick leave ordinances. The right of recall ordinance, just also too, we didn't get noted about these ordinances. It's almost 5. we didn't get a notice of these ordinances until a full 24 hours prior to the meeting. So there was a lot to sort through, you know, prior to the city council meeting. So that was another thing that upset businesses as well. And there were also pretty big changes that the city council was working towards. So the right of recall ordinance would require businesses that had gross receipts in 2019 exceeding $5 million. If they had laid off any employees, that they would have to, every employee that they laid off, if they started rehiring again, that employee would have a right to their job back. The employer would have to provide written an offer to that employee, and the employee would have up to 10 days to either accept or deny that offer. If there were 2 employees that would be essentially competing for the same position, then the employer would be required to give it to the person with seniority over the person that doesn't have seniority, that hasn't been there the longest. We felt, you know, there's a couple other provisions in there, but we also felt that was an extreme overreach by the LA City Council. We obviously believe that businesses, if they were already laying people off, if they were going to rehire again, that they would rehire probably the staff that they had laid off, because we know that training and hiring new staff can be a little bit of a pain. In addition to that, if there was a reason why they didn't hire that person back, then there was probably numerous reasons why that could be the case. And so we felt that it was up to the businesses to be able to decide that, not LA City Council. The worker retention ordinance is similar to that as well. The worker retention required that if a business was sold, that the new business owner would have to take on the current employees. And they would have to keep them on for at least 90 days. If they wanted to perhaps lay off some of the employees, they had to have a full written reason as to why they laid them off and keep them in a record for up to 3 years. And then in addition to that, if they did have a reason to lay off in between that 90 days, they would have to lay off the person, or they would have to keep the people with the most seniority. So regardless, if they wanted to lay off somebody based on merit, they would have to keep the person with the most seniority instead of on merit. So again, thought that was a huge overreach by the LA City Council, and the fact that we only got notice of what the full ordinance was and the details behind it 24 hours in advance because it was an emergency meeting led to a pretty big advocacy effort for the business community. In fact, we heard from LA City Council members that they had heard from the business community nonstop since that agenda came out. In addition to that, BizFed and the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, the LA Chamber, also met with editorial boards of the LA Times and the Southern California News Group. And both of them on the day of the city council meeting came out and opposed those two ordinances as well, which we were actually surprised by. We didn't think that they would actually take a position on it, and they did. So lucky for us, with the right to recall ordinance and the worker retention ordinance, the LA City Council decided to table the item after a grueling 11-hour meeting. They took up the item, I think, like at 9 p.m. And they cited, well, one, exhaustion. They couldn't think through the ordinances anymore at that time. And then two, they also believe that these weren't emergency measures that needed to be taken up immediately. This more had to do with, post COVID-19. This more had to, these two ordinances had to do with, recovery more than the current emergencies at hand. So they decided to table the item, and they asked for a report back that specifically said 30 days, but it could be anywhere between now or between that time, which is March 27th, and 30 days ahead of time, or any time in between. The third item that came up was the paid sick leave. That would have required employers to provide an additional 2 weeks of supplemental paid sick leave to employees within the city of LA. Originally, that was to employers that had 50 or more employees. It was amended to say only employers with 500 or more employees nationwide. That did pass the LA City Council meeting on March 27th. However, Mayor Garcetti did not sign that ordinance into law. On Tuesday, he decided to come out with an emergency, an executive order that essentially was still a paid sick leave ordinance or sick leave law, but it applied to employees with 500 or more employees within the city of Los Angeles. Instead of nationwide, it would just be 500 more employees within the city of Los Angeles, or 2,000 or more employees within the United States. And there's a couple other provisions in there, but that was the big change. So that is now a law in the city of Los Angeles as of 2 days ago. So last Tuesday, we had heard at an LA County Board of Supervisors meeting, it was brought forward by Janice Hahn and Hilda Solis. They had asked the county to look into implementing their own right of recall, worker retention, and paid sick leave policies. There's no details in it at all, in the motion at all. It just says we want the county and with several agencies on there to work together and to come back with the feasibility of what, if we were to do a right of recall or worker retention or paid sick leave ordinance, what would it look like, and what would you recommend that the county do? It was supposed to be a 7-day report back, but they didn't have a county meeting this week, but they will have one next Tuesday on April 14th. So we'll be watching that very closely. We had heard from Solis's office that they don't plan on voting on anything at that time, but we're also not taking our chances. So we, and alongside several members of the business community, do plan on being on that call. And once we get some more details on what the report back will actually look like, we'll probably be submitting a coalition letter as well. So that's my updates. And if there's any questions, happy to take any questions.
Great. Any questions from anyone? I'm gonna actually go ahead.
Question.
Yeah.
All right, sorry, I didn't get to. I'm just gonna say it. So, Sarah, did you mention the sick leave it's in addition to whatever the employer is already providing?
Correct. So there's.
Go ahead.
There is, within his order, there is a caveat, and I do believe there's a portion of it that can be offset if they're already providing it for their employees. I can't remember the specifics of it, but I'm happy to send you the order so you can take a look at it.
Okay, and there's nothing available to pay for that or help offset costs, tax credit wise, nothing like that, right?
Nope.
Okay.
City of LA.
Can I ask a question? Was there any exemption for any specific sectors like healthcare?
To my knowledge, no, but I don't want to give you wrong information.
Do you have a copy of what the mayor signed that we could look at?
Yes, I'm happy to send it over to Blair, and then
Yeah.
That would be great if you could send it to Blair and then he could send it around us. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
great.
Yeah. And up on the screen right now is some just basic information about, just so you know, the Beverly Hills Chamber has taken an opposed position to both these potential laws, both at the LA City level and the LA County level. So for the LA County level, there's a hearing on April 14th. Like Sarah said, looks like there's not going to be necessarily any votes, but we'd encourage you to email comments to the executive office email you see right there. And then for the LA City Council ordinance or proposed ordinance, it was tabled, but it could come back anytime. These are effectively, in some shape or form, trying to impose public sector civil service rules on the private sector. So it's, depending on what level they decide to do, it could be pretty egregious and certainly unprecedented. So I would strongly encourage you to email and to follow up and really keep a close eye on these things, because things are moving very fast in this environment. And I think it's fair to say there's always some attempted power grabs in this kind of environment.
Mm-hmm. And then to answer your question about exemptions, I did find the exemptions, so I apologize for that. So the exemptions apply to, this is for the LA City Council paid sick leave ordinance. It exempts emergency and health services personnel, critical parcel delivery, generous leave. So if an employer has a paid leave or paid time off policy that provides a minimum of 160 hours of paid leave annually, the employer is exempt from any obligation. So I guess that answers Jenny's question. There's a new business exemption if you're a government employee, and then if your business is already closed. So those are the exemptions.
Thanks, but will you still send it over to Blair for us to see?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank
I'll be
you.
sending kind of a summary, and like I said, this meeting's we're gonna have a recording of it, so we'll be able to send that out to people too in case they want to recap.
Great. Is there any questions? I don't see any questions in the chat. I don't see anyone's hand raised. So I think next on the agenda is, first of all, thank you so much for that great presentation. Next, we've got Blair from the Chamber. He's got some fun.
So I have quite a few updates. I do want to thank Sarah and her team from BizFed. You know, we do have quite a bit of members. About 30% of our members are outside Beverly Hills, and BizFed advocates throughout LA County, and they really do an amazing job when these laws come up and businesses aren't, don't necessarily have the time to keep track of all this stuff. They really do an amazing job. So thank you, Sarah, and the rest of your team for all that. I just have a few quick updates. I know we're getting towards the end here. So why don't I quickly share, I wanted to share a bit about resources we have available to you. So I just wanted to share real quickly our business page. We have a business resources page that you can access anytime. If you can kind of see here, we have a lot of information about loans, employment information about complimentary consultations for Beverly Hills businesses through our Small Business Development Center, a list of past webinars, and then special business offerings and similar things. So I really encourage you to go to that site. We also have a site right here. This is local takeout, delivery, and business offerings. So I encourage you to take a look at that and support our local businesses. One other thing I want to go over is we did submit, we've been working really closely with the City of Beverly Hills on ways to support our business community, and they've been great and really responsive. We have submitted some additional ideas of potential ideas to support the business community. We did submit an email about a couple weeks ago. I just wanted to show you briefly what we've submitted. We continue to advocate for the businesses around here. So some suggestions about limiting or suspending some certain fees, especially for businesses that are closed, and a potential loan or grant program. Some of these have actually been implemented. Number 5, the city's already relaxed signage limitations, and we thank the city for that. And we're doing a lot of work with the Small Business Development Center and the city to support businesses. Encourage you to, if you want more information about this, happy to share it with you. Just want to let you know we're continuing to kind of keep track of what's going on at the city level, the county level, state level, and federal level to support the businesses. And I know it's a challenging environment. Any questions about those? Any questions about those requests or anything like that before I move on? Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's Julie. You guys are doing a terrific job, and thank you so much, you and Todd and your team, and Laura, for really being supportive of all the businesses. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, and right back at you. I know it's been a challenging time. Julie is the you can introduce yourself. She's the head of the CVB and has been doing an amazing job with handling a very challenging environment in terms of hospitality and tourism, and we're hoping to get back really soon to to normal, so we can all enjoy the things we had before. So thank you, Julie. Working on it, at least, right?
Working on it, right?
Yeah, a couple of things real briefly. We've joined this thing called the Save Small Business Coalition. And just to give you a little context, a lot of businesses have insurance policies, but they don't necessarily cover events like this where there's a pandemic or a virus. So they're not necessarily covered by the business interruption insurance. So the Save Small Business Coalition, which we've joined, is basically trying to create a federal framework, kind of like there was a recovery fund for September 11th. For victims of that, same thing. They're looking at creating a federal program. And so we're working, it's being actually headed up by the CEO of the San Fernando Valley Chamber of Commerce. And we'll have more information about that soon, but I'd keep your eye on that because a lot of you who are small business owners or even sizable business owners may have challenges with insurance proceeds stemming from this. So I'd really keep a close eye on that. And we're gonna do that too, to kind of watch and see what opportunities there are for the business community to support them. A couple of the things we're working on is we're actually advocating, there's a new law many of you are familiar with because we've been harping on it quite a bit, is AB 5, which is this law that changed rules about when someone's an independent contractor. We were asking our legislators to look, or state legislators to look at either suspending or repealing that law. That law really limits the flexibility employers have on ability to hire people back in this environment. So we're very concerned about it. We're continuing to advocate for it and work with our partners. So that'll be something to continue to keep your eye on too. The other thing is still going on is LA Metro is working on what's called the first and last mile program to when the subway is complete to figure out ways to, and so the city is as well. So I'm going to be sending out an email with a draft that I received from LA Metro and get your input on what would you like to see in that? Is there anything you like it? You don't like it? Is there anything you want to see changed? And we'll send that afterwards so you guys can have an opportunity to comment on that. Otherwise, I'm going to open up in a second, but I'll just kind of talk about some of our observations and what we're seeing in the business community. Obviously, the retail, restaurant, hospitality sectors have been hit pretty hard. Some of the professional sectors, depending on where they're at, are in kind of a mixed boat. Some of the banks are doing obviously really, really busy, and they're actually only taking existing clients for some of these SBA loans. Different professional sectors are kind of, some of them are doing very well. Others have really slowed down a lot. I've started to hear more about the legal sector slowing down. Some of it may be insurance a little bit too. But we're kind of continuing to monitor that and put out updates kind of on a weekly basis about that. And then we'll have some more information about other coalitions to join. We've been talking and hearing a lot from the restaurant associations about what they'd like to see, potential freezes on increase in minimum wage, potential responses to other attempts to kind of put really restrictive rules on hiring and seniority and those kinds of things. So we're continuing to watch all those things closely and kind of watch out for your interests. So kind of with that, I'll kind of check, let's see if there's any questions real quick, and I'll see if there's anything else we should talk about. Oh, David mentioned the first and last mile. David, do you want to talk more about that, the first and last mile proposal that we saw from Metro? I'm happy to pull that up if we want to as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was asking if we thought if everyone had some time, we should probably spend like 3 or 4 minutes on it. It does seem like Alyssa would also like to hear a little bit more about that and how she can give input. That's
Okay.
options though.
Let me see if I can pull it up. I think I've attached it to the hold on, let me minimize this. And I prepared a packet for you all. And of course, now there's an immense amount of information coming back and forth. So let me see if I can find where it is. Let's see if I have it down at the bottom here.
And while Blair is doing that, I mean, the question, maybe this is the question for Laura, is how is the city interacting with this plan? Because I'm assuming this is coming from Metro. So is the city going to be inputting their thoughts on this plan as well and then augmenting that with more stuff? Like, what's the process look like?
Hi, this is Susan. We have reviewed it and provided comments. It's not very involved. And we also have the Wilshire Streetscape project at the same time. So we're very conscious of what they're proposing and working with them to meet some of the same goals.
Yeah, so here's I just pulled up on the screen the Wilshire Rodeo overview that Metro has prepared. I know the city has a big part in this to play too. This is kind of a little hard to go through in this sort of meeting context, but basically they're looking at how to make the best use of this station when it's up and running. So maybe, David, what we can do is just send it out to people, and if people have comments, send to us, and then we may develop our own list of comments that we can kind of submit to Metro, because Metro is taking this to their board. Last I heard, they're taking it to their board end of May. So maybe we should kind of proceed that way, unless you think differently.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. I'll send that out. Other questions? Joey from Apodaca from Congressman Liu's office mentioned that he's available for anyone who wants to chat about different issues affecting the federal government. Any other questions? Okay, and just so you guys know, and Laura touched on this a little bit, the LA Metro construction has really been expedited while businesses are closed. So the idea is to really complete it much faster, so that when we come out of this crisis, whenever that is, there'll be less construction, less impact to businesses. And so that will all depend on how long this crisis lasts and how fast they're able to move. But that's really in progress right now. So if you have any questions, we're hosting monthly stakeholder meetings virtually via Zoom. So it's usually the second Wednesday of every month. So if you want to be added to that list so I can add you to meetings, just email me or contact me and I'll make sure you get added to that. Other questions or updates? Okay. Anything else from you, David?
No, I just hope everyone stays safe. Again, for anyone that observes Easter or Passover, have a happy holiday and a safe holiday. And let's get out of this. Let's get out of this crisis and hopefully meet in person.
Yeah. And last thing, I encourage anyone, colleagues, chamber members, to really come to these meetings. This is just tip of the iceberg. I mean, we didn't even talk about certain things. So we're going to have a lot to talk about each month. And I think it's more important than ever to just all be talking to each other and staying informed. So we'll continue to have these meetings. And if you have ideas for agenda items, please shoot them to us. And thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jenning. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Laura, for coming and talking. Have a good night.